I'm Maya, 29, female, and after my sister slapped me for refusing to cancel my birthday trip to babysit for her, and my family just watched, I went home and canceled every single bill I paid for them. The mortgage, the groceries, and the phones. It wasn't just a reaction, it was the culmination of a lifetime of being the family's designated pillar, a pillar they had no problem chipping away at whenever it suited them. The slap was just the final, resounding crack that brought the whole structure down. My family operates on an unspoken set of rules, established so long ago that no one even acknowledges them anymore. Rule number 1, Maya is the responsible one. Rule number 2, my older sister, Chloe, is the fragile one. Rule number 3, and perhaps the most important, in any conflict between the responsible one and the fragile one, the responsible one must always yield, because the fragile one might break. For nearly 30 years, I had followed these rules. Without question. I was the family's bedrock, the quiet and steady daughter who got good grades, went to a good college, and landed a great job as a software engineer. My salary wasn't just my own, it was a safety net for everyone. It started small. When we were teenagers, Chloe, who is 3 years older, was the one who always needed a little extra cash for a concert or a new outfit. My parents, Helen and Mark, would sigh and give it to her, telling her to be more careful with her money. I, on the other hand, was praised for my thriftiness, for working a part-time job and saving. It felt good at the time, to be the good daughter. I didn't realize then that I was being conditioned for a role I would be expected to play for the rest of my life. The first major test of my role came when I was 24. I had just received my first big promotion, and with it, a significant pay raise. I was living in a small apartment, carefully building my savings, with dreams of one day buying a place of my own. Around the same time, Chloe, who had drifted through a series of low-paying jobs before deciding to become a freelance graphic designer, crashed her car. It wasn't a terrible accident, but the repairs were expensive, nearly $3,000. She didn't have the money. She certainly didn't have the credit to get a loan. I remember the family dinner where it all came out. Chloe was weeping, not out of fear from the accident, but out of frustration. I can't get to my clients, she sobbed, conveniently forgetting that most of her clients were online. My whole career is over before it even started. My parents looked helpless. My dad, Mark, patted her hand, his face a mask of worry. My mom, Helen, looked at me. It was a subtle glance, but it carried the weight of years of expectation. It was the "Maya will fix it" look. I could help, I offered, the words feeling like they were pulled from me. The relief in the room was palpable. Chloe's tears dried up instantly. "Oh, Maya, would you? You're a lifesaver. I'll pay you back, I swear." I knew, even then, that I would never see a dime of that money. But I wrote the check. It took a significant bite out of my savings, pushing my own dreams further down the road. But my family was happy. Chloe was mobile again, and my parents praised me for weeks. "You have such a good heart, Maya," my mother would say. "Always looking out for your sister." They never called it what it was, a bailout. It was always framed as my generosity, my choice, which made it impossible to resent. That incident set the precedent. My generosity became the family's default resource. A year later, they wanted to go on a family cruise. It sounded wonderful, but the dates conflicted with a major project launch at my company. I couldn't possibly take the time off. "Oh, that's a shame," my mom said on the phone. There was a pause. "The thing is, honey, we can't really afford the tickets for all of us without a little help." I knew what she was asking. They wanted me to contribute to a vacation I couldn't even go on. Chloe, of course, had no such work conflicts. Her freelance schedule was, as she put it, wonderfully flexible. The conversation ended with me agreeing to pay for my parents' tickets, chalking it up to a filial duty, a thank you for all they'd done for me. They sent me postcards from the Bahamas, smiling alongside a beaming Chloe. I looked at them on my lunch breaks, sitting under the fluorescent lights of my office, and a small, bitter seed of resentment began to sprout. The biggest step, the one that truly cemented my role as the family provider, happened 3 years ago. My parents' landlord decided to sell the house they had been renting for over a decade. They were panicked. Their income was modest, and the rental market in our city had become prohibitively expensive. They had no savings to speak of for a down payment. The solution, once again, was Maya. "You're so good with money," my dad said, during another tense family meeting. "Maybe you could co-sign a mortgage for us? Just to get our foot in the door." I looked into it. With my income and credit score, and their lack of both, a co-signature wasn't enough. The bank would only approve the loan if I was the primary applicant. It would be my mortgage. My debt. I would own the house my parents and, for a time, my sister lived in. "We'll pay you rent, of course," my mom assured me. "Every month. You won't have to worry about a thing." So I did it. I bought my family a home. The rent they paid was sporadic at best, and never enough to cover the full mortgage payment, let alone the property taxes and insurance. I told myself it was worth it to see them secure and happy. But I was no longer just the daughter, I was the landlady, the bank, the unending fountain of financial stability. It was on my shoulders to keep their world turning. I set up automatic payments for their groceries, a premium delivery service that meant my mom never had to worry about a thing. I put them on my family phone plan, with unlimited everything. I was paying for their life, and in return, I received their love. Or so I thought. I didn't understand that what I was receiving was not love, but dependency. And dependency, I was about to find out, can look a lot like love until the moment you say no. The trip wasn't just a trip. It was a symbol. For my entire 20s, I had worked. I'd put my head down, deferred my own gratification, and built a career that, while I was proud of it, had consumed the better part of my youth. Turning 30 felt monumental. It was a line in the sand. On one side was the responsible, dutiful Maya who always put everyone else first. On the other side was the woman I wanted to become, one who valued herself as much as she valued others, and so, I planned the perfect escape. A 10-day solo trip to the Amalfi Coast in Italy. I dreamed of it for years, ever since I saw a picture of Positano's colorful houses cascading down the cliffside to the sea. It was the antithesis of my life, unstructured, beautiful, and entirely for me. I spent months researching, planning every detail. I booked a charming little hotel with a balcony overlooking the water. I scheduled a cooking class in Ravello and a boat tour to the island of Capri. I used a huge chunk of my own personal savings, money that hadn't been earmarked for a family emergency or a sisterly bailout. The flights and hotel were booked 6 months in advance. They were non-refundable. My 30th birthday was my stake in the ground, my declaration of independence. I told my family about it during our weekly Sunday dinner. For my 30th, I announced. A giddy excitement bubbling in my chest. "I'm going to Italy." My mother smiled, a little thinly. I thought. "All by yourself? Is that safe, honey?" "I'll be perfectly safe, Mom. It's something I've always wanted to do." My dad chimed in, "Well, good for you, kiddo. You've earned it." Chloe, however, was quiet. She picked at her food, a small, tight line forming between her brows. 10 days is a long time, she said, not looking at me. "Who's going to water the plants?" It was a classic Chloe comment, designed to shrink my big moment into a mundane inconvenience for her. I brushed it off. "I'm sure you'll all manage." In the weeks leading up to my departure, my excitement grew. I bought a new suitcase, a few sundresses, and a ridiculously overpriced but beautiful sun hat. I downloaded Italian language apps on my phone. My departure date was a Friday. My birthday was the following Tuesday, and I planned to spend it on a boat, sipping Prosecco and feeling the Mediterranean sun on my skin. It was so close I could taste it. Then, on the Tuesday before I was set to leave, my phone rang. It was Chloe. Her tone was breezy, casual, the way it always was when she was about to ask for something. Hey, May. Whatcha doin'? Just finishing up some work before I start packing, I said, the smile evident in my voice. I'm so excited, I can barely focus. Yeah. That's great, she said dismissively. Listen, something's come up. Dan's parents just offered us their timeshare in the mountains for this weekend. It's totally last minute, but we can't pass it up. We desperately need a break. Dan was Chloe's husband, a man whose ambition peaked at finding the most comfortable spot on the couch. Their need for a break was a constant theme, despite their lives being considerably less stressful than mine. Oh, that's nice, I said, waiting for the other shoe to drop. So, anyway, she continued, the breeziness intensifying. We'll be leaving Friday morning and coming back Sunday night. I'll need you to watch Leo and Mia. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. A scheduling announcement. I actually laughed, thinking she was joking. Chloe, you know. I'm leaving for Italy on Friday morning. My flight is at 9 a.m. There was a beat of silence. Her voice, when it came back, had lost its airy quality. It was flat and cold. You'll have to change it. What? I'm not changing it. Chloe, this trip has been booked for months. It's my 30th birthday. It's non-refundable. Don't be so dramatic, she scoffed. You can just go next week. The Amalfi Coast isn't going anywhere. This is important. We need this time. The kids have been driving me crazy. I felt a familiar, hot wave of disbelief and anger wash over me. She was not just asking me to change my plans, she was trivializing them, dismissing a milestone I had been eagerly anticipating as if it were a dentist appointment I could easily reschedule. No, Chloe, I said, my voice firm but even. I am not canceling my birthday trip to babysit for you. You can find someone else. Or, and this is a wild idea, you can take your children with you. You know Mia gets carsick in the mountains, she snapped. And you're the only one we trust. It's just one weekend. I don't understand why you're being so selfish. Selfish. The word hit me like a physical blow. For years, I had poured my time, energy, and money into this family. I had sacrificed my own wants for their needs, my own financial security for theirs. I had bought the very house she was calling me from. And because I refused to throw away thousands of dollars and the one thing I had ever truly done for myself, I was the selfish one. I'm not discussing this further, I said. My patience completely gone. My answer is no. I'm going to Italy. I'm sorry this is inconvenient for you, but you'll have to make other arrangements. We'll see about that, she said, her voice laced with a threat I couldn't quite decipher. Then she hung up. I stood in my living room, the phone still pressed to my ear, my heart pounding. The joy I had felt just moments before had evaporated, replaced by a dreadful certainty. This was not over. Chloe had never taken no for an answer. And when she didn't get her way, she always went to the one place she knew she would find a sympathetic ear, our parents. I knew, with a sinking feeling, that my next stop would have to be the family home. I drove to my parents' house, the house I paid for, with a knot of dread in my stomach. I knew what I was walking into. It wasn't going to be a rational discussion, it was going to be an emotional tribunal where I was already the defendant. When I arrived, Chloe's car was already in the driveway, parked with its usual haphazard laziness, partially blocking my path. A perfect metaphor. I let myself in. They were all in the living room, a space I had furnished, sitting on a sofa I had bought. My mom, Helen, was seated next to a red-eyed Chloe, rubbing her back soothingly. My dad, Mark, stood by the fireplace. His arms crossed, his face set in that familiar look of paternal disappointment he reserved exclusively for me. The scene was perfectly staged. The fragile daughter, wounded and weeping, the concerned parents, and now, the arrival of the villain, there. You are, my dad said, his voice heavy with disapproval. Chloe told us what you said. She told you that I refused to cancel my non-refundable 30th birthday trip to Italy so I could babysit for her last-minute getaway? I asked, keeping my voice as calm and neutral as possible. She told us you were being incredibly selfish and unsupportive, my mother countered, not even looking at me. She was entirely focused on Chloe, who let out a theatrical sniffle. I need this break, Mia, Chloe whimpered, her voice thick with manufactured despair. You have no idea how stressful my life is. You just go to your perfect little job and live your perfect little life. You don't understand. The sheer audacity of her words stole my breath. I looked around the comfortable living room, at the top-of-the-line television, at the fully stocked kitchen I could see through the doorway. Her life was stressful because the person who subsidized it to the tune of thousands of dollars a month wanted to take 10 days for herself. My perfect little life is what pays the mortgage on this house, Chloe, I said, my composure starting to crack. My job is what pays for the groceries in the fridge and the phones you're all holding. Don't you dare throw that in our faces, my dad boomed, taking a step forward. We are your family. We are not a business transaction. Being a daughter comes with responsibilities. And being a sister? Being parents? Does that not come with responsibilities? I shot back, my voice rising. Where was your sense of responsibility when I paid for Chloe's car? Or when I funded your vacation? I have been responsible my entire life. For all of you. This one single time, I am doing something for myself, and you're treating me like a criminal. It's not just a one-time, Chloe said, suddenly sitting up straight, her tears miraculously gone. Her face was hard and angry. It's a pattern. You think you're better than us because you have money. You hold it over our heads. I have never held it over your heads. I exclaimed, genuinely shocked. I have never once mentioned the money until tonight, when you called me selfish for spending my own on myself. You're the one who sees this family as a transaction. You believe you're entitled to my time and my resources simply because we share blood. Oh, so you're a martyr now? Chloe sneered, getting to her feet. She walked towards me. Her posture aggressive. Put upon Maya, slaving away for her terrible, ungrateful family. Is that it? Chloe, that's enough, my mom said weakly, without any real conviction. No, I want to hear it, Chloe insisted, her face now inches from mine. I could see the fury in her eyes, the irrational rage of a spoiled child who has just been denied a toy. Say it. You think we're just leeches, don't you? I stood my ground. I refuse to be intimidated. I think you're my sister, I said, my voice dropping to a low, intense whisper. And I think you are unbelievably entitled. I think you have no concept of what it means to work for something, because you've always had me to fall back on. My answer is no. I am not canceling my trip. I held her gaze, unflinching. For a split second, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, confusion, maybe even shame. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by pure, unadulterated fury, and then it happened. Her hand came up so fast I barely had time to register it. The crack of her palm connecting with my cheek echoed in the silent room. My head snapped to the side, and a sharp, stinging pain erupted across my skin. For a moment, there was no sound at all, just the high-pitched ringing in my ears. The shock was absolute. It wasn't just the physical pain, it was the violation. My sister had hit me. Slowly, I turned my head back to face the room. I looked past Chloe, past the perpetrator of the assault, to the witnesses. My judges. My jury. My parents. They stood frozen, their faces etched not with horror or outrage on my behalf, but with a kind of weary frustration. My mother had her hands clasped to her mouth, her eyes wide with what looked like annoyance. My father's expression was stony. His jaw tight with what I could only interpret as exasperation, and no one moved. No one spoke. No one rushed to my side. No one reprimanded Chloe. They just watched, their silence a deafening roar of complicity. In that silence, I understood everything. I was not their daughter in that moment, I was a problem. I was the cause of the disruption. My refusal, my selfish, unacceptable no, had pushed their fragile Chloe to this point. In their eyes, I had brought this on myself. The sting on my cheek began to fade, replaced by an icy cold that spread through my entire body. I looked at my mother, pleading with my eyes for her to say something, to do something, to be a mother. She just looked away, her gaze falling to the floor. I looked at my father, the man who was supposed to protect me. He just shook his head. Slightly, a silent indictment. You should have just said yes. Chloe was still standing in front of me, breathing heavily, her hand still tingling from the impact. She didn't look sorry. She looked justified. I didn't say another word. There was nothing left to say. They had shown me my true place in the family. I was not a person. I was a utility. And a utility that ceases to function as expected is not to be cared for, it's to be kicked. With a strange, almost out-of-body calmness, I turned around, walked out of the living room, and closed the front door quietly behind me. The cold night air hit my hot cheek. The spell was broken. The rules were abolished. The pillar had crumbled. And as I walked to my car, I knew exactly what I had to do. The drive home was a blur. I don't remember the traffic or the route. My mind was a silent, replaying loop of the last 10 minutes, the sneer on Chloe's face, the sharp crack of the slap, and the crushing, absolute silence of my parents. The stinging on my cheek had subsided into a dull, throbbing ache, a physical reminder of a wound that went bone deep. It wasn't the slap itself that hurt the most. It was the watching. It was the silence. It was the realization that in a room full of my family, I was utterly and completely alone. For years, I had operated under the illusion that my financial support was an expression of my love, and their acceptance of it was an expression of theirs. I saw it as a symbiotic relationship. I provided stability, they provided belonging. But the slap, and the silence that followed, had shattered that illusion into a million pieces. They didn't love me, they loved what I provided. My support wasn't a gift, it was an expectation. My presence wasn't cherished, it was tolerated as long as I was useful. The moment my utility conflicted with Chloe's desire, I was disposable. By the time I walked into my own apartment, a space that was mine alone, that no one else had a claim to, the grief had begun to crystallize. The profound sadness was solidifying into something new, a cold, clear, diamond-hard resolve. They had slapped their daughter. They had abandoned their sister. They had shown me, in no uncertain terms, that I was nothing more to them than a walking, talking bank account. Fine. This bank account was now officially closed. I didn't storm around my apartment. I didn't throw things or scream. My movements were slow, deliberate, precise. I walked over to my desk, opened my laptop, and the screen illuminated my face in the dim light. My reflection stared back at me from the dark screen for a moment. My cheek was red and slightly swollen. I looked wounded, but my eyes held a fire they hadn't had before. The first call was the hardest, but also the most symbolic. The mortgage. It was in my name. The house was legally mine. I had the bank's customer service number on speed dial. Filed under Family Home. I navigated the automated menu with an unnerving calm. When a human voice finally came on the line, I was ready. Hello, my name is Maya, I said, my voice steady. I need to cancel all future automatic payments linked to my checking account for my mortgage, loan number 7-4-3-2-1. Of course, ma'am, the agent replied cheerfully. Can I ask the reason for the cancellation today? I paused, the truthful answer catching in my throat. Because my family thinks my only value is monetary, so I'm conducting an experiment to see what happens when the money stops. Instead, I said, I'll be making manual payments from a different account going forward. It was a lie, but it was a clean, simple one that required no further explanation. All right, all done for you, he said after a few clicks. The next payment is due on the 1st of the month. It will now need to be paid manually. Is there anything else I can help you with? No, I said. Thank you. I hung up. One cord cut. It felt strangely liberating. There was no fanfare, just a quiet click and a confirmation email that popped into my inbox a moment later. Subject: confirmation of autopay cancellation. It was the first step. Next was the groceries. I had subscribed them to a premium service called Farmstead Direct. It delivered fresh, organic produce, high-quality meats, and all their pantry staples twice a week. My mom loved it. She would often text me pictures of the beautiful vegetables, saying, "Look what your service brought us today." My service. Not our service. I logged into the Farmstead Direct website. My family's address was listed right there under my account. I could see their past orders, a history of my quiet, consistent provision. A click on my subscription. A click on manage. A big, red button appeared, cancel subscription. I pressed it without hesitation. A pop-up asked for a reason. I scrolled through the options, too expensive, not satisfied with the quality, moving, and selected other. A text box appeared. I typed one word, unnecessary. Then I clicked confirm. The website refreshed. Your subscription has been cancelled. 2 cords cut. Finally, the phones. This was perhaps the most direct and immediately impactful line of support. I was the primary account holder on a 4-line family plan. It had been easier and cheaper for me to add them to my plan than for them to get their own, given their spotty credit. For years, I had been paying for their endless calls, their data, their ability to be constantly connected to the world and to each other. I logged into the mobile carrier's portal. I saw the 4 lines listed: Mia, primary, Helen, Mark, Chloe. With a few clicks, I entered the management section for the other 3 lines. The process was sickeningly simple. For each name, I clicked remove line from account. The system informed me that the numbers would be deactivated within the hour unless they were transferred to a new account holder. I knew they wouldn't be. They wouldn't even know what was happening until their phones suddenly stopped working. I clicked confirm for Helen. I clicked confirm for Mark. And with a final, decisive click, I confirmed the removal of Chloe's line. 3. Cords cut. The digital umbilical cords that connected them to me and to the world, paid for by me, were now severed. I closed my laptop. The silence in my apartment felt different now. It was no longer the empty silence of loneliness, but the peaceful silence of sovereignty. I had built the gilded cage they lived in, and I had just opened the door and walked away. They didn't know it yet. They were still in the house I owned, probably feeling smug and justified, believing I would come crawling back with an apology, ready to resume my duties. They had no idea that their world as they knew it was about to go dark. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt a flicker of something that resembled peace. I was no longer their safety net. I was just Maya. And Maya was finally taking care of herself. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of lightness. For the first time in years, I hadn't gone to sleep with the heavy weight of my family's implicit expectations on my shoulders. I made coffee and sat by my window, watching the city wake up. I had taken the rest of the week off from work to prepare for my trip, and the day stretched before me, a blank slate. I resolved not to think about my family, to let the consequences of my actions unfold without my involvement. Nature, I figured, would take its course. Nature, it turned out, was furious. The first text message arrived at 10:17 a.m. It was from Chloe. Chloe, my phone isn't working. I can't make calls. Did you forget to pay the bill or something? I read the message and felt nothing. No anger, no guilt, not even satisfaction. It was like reading a weather report. I didn't reply. I placed my phone face down on the counter and started to make a list of things I needed to pack. 15 minutes later, a cascade of notifications. Chloe, Maya, I'm serious. What's going on? I need my phone for work. Chloe, are you ignoring me? This isn't funny. Chloe, pick up your phone. Shortly after, a message from my mother, Helen. Her tone was more confused than angry, laced with a familiar helplessness. The mom. Hi, honey. The farmstead delivery didn't come this morning. Did they change the schedule? I was planning on making that salmon for dinner. Her concern wasn't for me, or about the fight. It was about the salmon. The disruption to her routine. That, more than anything, confirmed I had done the right thing. I continued to ignore the messages, a silent observer to the slow-motion collapse I had initiated throughout the afternoon. The messages grew more frantic. They were clearly communicating with each other, likely through a Wi-Fi messaging app, their confusion coalescing into a shared narrative of bewilderment and indignation. Chloe, Mom says the grocery service was canceled too. What did you do? Dad, Maya, your mother is very upset. Call me immediately. This is not the way to handle a family disagreement. A family disagreement. That's what they were calling it. A physical assault and a lifetime of emotional neglect had been downgraded to a simple squabble. Their ability to minimize their own culpability was truly breathtaking. I went about my day. I went to the gym. I bought a new book for the plane. I did my laundry. With every normal, mundane task I completed for myself, the knot of resentment in my chest loosened a little more. My phone continued to buzz, a frantic, angry insect on my kitchen counter. I refused to let it disrupt my peace. The real explosion came the next day. It came in the form of an email, not to me, but to my father. The bank, as a courtesy, sent a notification of the failed autopay for the mortgage to the secondary contact on file. My father forwarded it to me without comment. The subject line, written by him, was in all caps. What is this? Attached was the cold, official letter from the bank. Dear Mark, this is to inform you that the scheduled automatic payment for your mortgage has failed due to a cancellation of the autopay agreement by the primary account holder, Maya. Within minutes, my phone began to ring. It was my dad. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. And again. And again. Each time, he left a more unhinged message. The first was angry. Maya, I just got an email from the bank. You stopped paying the mortgage? Are you out of your mind? You call me back this instant. This is not a game. The second was threatening. You are legally obligated to, you can't just, you're going to ruin our credit. You have no idea what you're doing. You are being childish and irresponsible. The third was pleading. His voice had cracked. The anger was gone, replaced by sheer panic. Maya, please, honey. What's happening? We can't afford this place without you. Your mother is a wreck. Please, just call us. We can talk this through. Whatever we did, we're sorry. Please. The sorry was hollow. It wasn't an apology for their actions, but for the consequences they were now facing. They weren't sorry they had hurt me, they were sorry they had been cut off. Chloe's messages started again, a torrent of vitriol and panic. Chloe, they're going to foreclose on the house because of you. Chloe, you are the most selfish, vindictive person I have ever known. You would make your own parents homeless over a stupid vacation. Chloe, I hate you. I truly, truly hate you. I read them all. I let their panic, their anger, and their feigned remorse wash over me. It was a storm, but I was safely on shore, watching from a distance. For years, I had been their emergency contact, their financial first responder. By removing myself from that role, I had forced them to confront the reality of their own lives, a reality I had carefully shielded them from. The silence from my end was my true response. It was a vacuum into which they poured all their rage and fear. They had no one to blame but me, because blaming themselves was unthinkable. They had no one to fix it, because the fixer had finally quit. I spent the rest of the day packing my new suitcase. I neatly folded my sundresses. I placed my new book and my passport on top. As I zipped the suitcase closed, the finality of the action felt immense. I was not just closing a piece of luggage, I was closing a chapter of my life. A chapter where my worth was measured in dollars and my love was taken for granted. That evening, I sent my one and only reply. It was a group text to my parents and Chloe. I will meet you tomorrow at 1 p.m. at the coffee shop by the lake. Not at the house. We will talk. After that, I will be unreachable. I turned my phone off. For the first time, the silence was complete. The coffee shop by the lake was neutral territory. It was a place devoid of memories, a sterile environment for the surgery I was about to perform. I arrived 10 minutes early and chose a table in a quiet corner, a spot that gave me a clear view of the entrance but offered a degree of privacy. I ordered a black coffee and sat, feeling a strange sense of calm. The panic and fury from their messages had been like a distant thunderstorm. Now, I was in the quiet eye of the storm, waiting for it to make landfall. They arrived together, a united front of misery and indignation. My father, Mark, walked in first, his face a thunderous mask of anger. Chloe followed, her expression sullen and resentful. My mother, Helen, trailed behind them, looking smaller and more frail than I'd ever seen her, her eyes red-rimmed and darting around nervously as if she expected to be publicly shamed. They looked haggard, sleep-deprived, and utterly lost. For a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of something resembling pity. But then I remembered the silence in the living room, the sting on my cheek, and the pity vanished, replaced by resolve. They sat down without a word, the air thick with unspoken accusations. My father placed his hands flat on the table, as if to keep himself from lunging across it. He spoke first, his voice a low, controlled rumble. Do you have any idea what you've done? I took a slow sip of my coffee before answering. Yes, I said quietly. I do. You stopped paying the mortgage, he continued, as if I were a confused child who didn't understand the gravity of her actions. You canceled the groceries. You cut off our phones. This is unbelievably cruel, Maya. We are your family. Am I? I asked, my voice still soft, but with an edge of steel they had never heard before. Because last Tuesday, I didn't feel like family. When your other daughter slapped me across the face, and you both stood there and did nothing, I didn't feel like a daughter. I felt like an employee whose services were no longer required. My mother flinched. A small, involuntary movement. Chloe scoffed and rolled her eyes, looking out the window as if the conversation was boring her. Oh, here we go, Chloe muttered. This is all about the slap? You're going to make us homeless over a little tap on the cheek? A little tap? I turned my gaze fully on her. You assaulted me, Chloe. You hit me because I told you no, for the first time in your adult life. And you, I said, shifting my gaze to my parents, you watched. You sanctioned it with your silence. You validated her belief that she is entitled to my life, my time, my body. That's not fair, my mother whispered, her voice trembling. We were in shock. It happened so fast. It did happen fast, I agreed. But the silence afterward lasted an eternity. In that silence, you had a choice. You could have turned to Chloe and said, you never, ever lay a hand on your sister. You could have come to me and asked if I was okay. You did neither. You looked at me with disappointment, as if I were the one who had created the problem. Your shock wasn't that she hit me, it was that I had finally refused to bend. I let the words hang in the air. I had their full attention now. Even Chloe was looking at me, her usual smirk gone, replaced by a look of grudging focus. For years, I continued, my voice gaining strength, our relationship has been based on a single, unspoken agreement, I provide, and you take. I never minded, because I thought it was balanced with love and respect. But I was wrong. The respect was a mirage. It was only there as long as the money flowed. The moment I chose myself, the respect vanished. I looked at each of them in turn, connecting my actions directly to their failures. I paid for the phones you used to call me selfish and demand I fix your problems. So I canceled the phones. I paid for the groceries you ate while you planned how to ambush me and emotionally blackmail me into submission. So I canceled the groceries. And this house, I said, my voice dropping slightly. This house you live in. It's not your house. It's my house. It's my debt. It's my name on the deed. I paid the mortgage every month so you could have a safe place to live, a place where I assumed my family would be safe, too. When Chloe assaulted me in my own house, and my parents, her parents, did nothing to protect me, you broke the entire foundation of that arrangement. You don't get to enjoy the shelter I provide and then attack me within its walls. So I stopped paying the mortgage. My father stared at me, his face pale. The anger had drained out of him, replaced by a dawning, horrified understanding. My mother was openly weeping now, quiet sobs into a crumpled napkin. This isn't about revenge, I said, my voice softening just a fraction. This was the most important part. This is about consequences. This is what life looks like without my support. This is the reality you have all refused to acknowledge. You are adults. It is time you started acting like it. Chloe finally spoke, her voice small, almost unrecognizable. So what happens now? Are you really going to let the bank take the house? What happens now, I said, looking directly at her, is that you figure it out. You and Mom and Dad. You will have to talk to the bank. You will have to figure out how to pay for your own food, your own phones, your own home. It's what everyone else in the world does. I stood up, my chair scraping softly against the floor. I am leaving for my trip tomorrow. I am going to celebrate my birthday, and I am going to start living my life for me. I will not be transferring ownership of the house to you, but I will not be making the payments either. You have some time to decide what you want to do. You can try to assume the loan. You can sell it. That is your problem to solve now. I placed a $10 bill on the table to cover my coffee. I will not be answering my phone. I need space. Real space. When I get back from my trip, I will decide what, if any, future relationship we can have. But the Bank of Maya is closed. Permanently. I turned and walked away, not looking back. I didn't need to. I could feel their stunned silence behind me, a silence that was profoundly different from the one in the living room. That silence had been an act of judgment against me. This one was the sound of their world shifting on its axis. And as I stepped out into the bright afternoon sun, I felt the last of the weight lift from my shoulders. I was free. The next morning, the air in my apartment felt different. It was still and quiet, but it was a vibrant, expectant quiet, like the moment before a symphony begins. My phone was off, tucked away in a drawer. The world of my family's making, their demands, their panic, their expectations, had been muted. All that was left was me and the promise of a new beginning. Packing the last few items into my carry-on felt like a sacred ritual. Each item was a deliberate choice for my new life. A journal to document my thoughts, a novel by an author I admired, a playlist of music that made me feel hopeful. I wasn't just packing for a vacation, I was packing for a pilgrimage. I was leaving the old Maya behind and setting off to meet the woman I was supposed to be. The journey to the airport was surreal. The city looked the same, the traffic was the same, but I was seeing it through new eyes. I wasn't escaping. I was arriving. The check-in process, the security line, the walk to the gate, it all felt imbued with a new significance. These were the steps on my path to liberation. As I settled into my window seat on the plane, I looked out at the ground crew, at the other planes taking off and landing. The world was full of people going about their lives, carrying their own burdens, celebrating their own triumphs. For so long, my world had been confined to the small, suffocating ecosystem of my family. I had let their problems become my own, their needs eclipse my own. Now, watching the ground fall away as the plane ascended, I felt my perspective shifting, widening. I was just one person in a world of billions, and my only true responsibility was to live my one life as authentically as possible. The 10 days in Italy were more than I could have dreamed. It wasn't just the beauty of the scenery, though it was breathtaking. It wasn't just the delicious food or the warm sun. It was the profound, uninterrupted peace. I woke up each morning and the only question I had to answer was, what do I want to do today? I wandered through ancient streets, I sat in cafes for hours, reading and watching the world go by. I took the boat to Capri, and on my 30th birthday, I sat on the deck, a glass of Prosecco in my hand, and toasted myself. Not the responsible daughter, not the financial savior, not the family pillar. Just Maya. I thought about my family, of course. Not with anger or resentment anymore, but with a kind of detached clarity. I hoped they would find a way. I hoped my father would step up, that my mother would find her voice, that Chloe would finally grow up. But their journey was their own. I had finally accepted that I could not walk it for them. My love for them had been a crippling love, an enabling love. The kindest thing I had ever done for them, and for myself, was to let them go. When I returned home, tanned and rested and feeling more like myself than ever before, there was a single, plain white envelope slid under my door. It was from my parents. I opened it with steady hands. Inside was not a letter full of excuses or accusations, but a single sheet of paper. It was a budget. A meticulously, almost painfully detailed budget. On it, they had listed their combined income and all their new expenses, rent for a small apartment, a budget phone plan, grocery costs. At the bottom, in my father's shaky handwriting, were 2 sentences, "We are selling the house. We are so sorry, Maya. We hope one day you can forgive us." Tears welled in my eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of relief. It was the beginning of their own journey. It wouldn't be easy for them, but for the first time, it was theirs. The relationship with my family is not what it once was. It never will be. The easy familiarity is gone, replaced by a more cautious, deliberate respect. There are no more assumptions, no more unspoken demands. I see them on my terms now, for holidays and occasional dinners. Chloe and I are civil, but the sisterly bond is fractured, perhaps irreparably. I am no longer their safety net. But I am. Finally, their daughter and their sister, on equal footing. They are finally learning to see me, not for what I can give them, but for who I am. And as for me, I am still learning who that is. But I know one thing for sure, she is free. So, I have to ask, what would you have done in my shoes? Would you have cancelled the trip? Would you have confronted them sooner? Or would you have done exactly what I did? Let me know your thoughts. After listening to today's story, perhaps it has raised some new questions in your mind. Every day on Reddit, new experiences and moments create fresh stories. We are all human, navigating complex relationships and difficult choices. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to share it with someone who might appreciate it. Thank you for your time, and don't forget to keep an eye out for more stories coming soon.